Hello and welcome to the Political Opinions podcast, where every opinion is given equal footing and tolerance and debate are given their proper attention in a world where both are on the decline. Today's episode will cover different opinions on mandatory military service. Ask any American who lived during the Vietnam War and they will likely remember the dreaded draft. The letter from the government informing you that you are required to serve your country in the military. Something as seemingly draconian as this might appear unthinkable in the modern age. Countries such as Israel, however, have shown that mandatory military service can still exist and be at least accepted. There are people today who still vouch for military service and believe it to be both necessary and morally acceptable. In the age of individual freedom, however, there are those who vehemently oppose it. Today we will unpack and compare these opinions. The first and perhaps most obvious benefit of military service is that it provides a steady amount of manpower at all times. Given that the population across age groups remains relatively stable, with military service there will always be a set number of people guaranteed to serve within the Army, Navy and Air Force. Given the age range and period of military service can also be tailored to a nation's needs, there will almost always be enough people to serve at any given time. Now, with all these people coming together in the task of serving their nation, it is also hoped that there will be a boost to national unity. No more will society be so clearly divided on such important issues, such as your favourite football team or what smartphone operating system you use. Instead, everyone will be united behind their nation. Humans are social creatures, and being a citizen to some requires far more than an individual focus. This extends to serving society and uniting behind the army. Now, speaking of serving others, don't we all hate the lazy youth of today? They spend all day moseying around, sleeping in late and losing their lives and minds to such horrible and dangerous things like TikTok and video games. With mandatory military service, we will straighten out the youth of today, teach them essential skills like respect, work ethic and survival skills. Military service will therefore equip the youth of today with essential life experience that seems to be lost on many of them. Now, speaking of experience, it goes without saying that by training essentially everyone in society to aid in the military effort in some form or another, there will be a large supply of experienced individuals to serve if the time came. This can be a huge deterrent to would-be invaders, who not only have to contend with the existing military, but also a population of potentially in the tens of millions of people, also capable of fighting back. For example, Israel's standing army is around 160,000 troops. However, due to military service, the nation has over 3 million people fit to fight should they be needed. Now, by training all these millions of people to serve, we also solve another issue with modern society: worsening public health. Nearly 3/4 of American adults are overweight, but that number could be greatly diminished if they served in the army, or just the military in general. By needing to be fit for service, people will be healthier, as well as be trained to be more physically fit. Not only therefore are we getting lazy teenagers off their butts to serve, but also the overweight. It's a win-win, really. Now, of course, at this point, you could point out that mandatory military service violates people's freedom to choose. In response, I would say that you only have freedom because the state has given it to you, and you can only maintain freedoms if the state is maintained. Therefore, you have a duty to aid in the defence of the state, which includes serving for a time in its military. Military service can therefore help protect a nation as well as solve many societal issues. And there is one final benefit too. Similar to promoting unity within society, it can unify people with patriotism behind their nation. People are rallied behind the country which they serve, and this can help put aside many toxic divisions within countries today. In other words, unity through strength, and unity through service. Now, that line, unity through strength, is one that has been used by many fascist and ultra-nationalist groups in the past. We'll come back to it later, but for now let's take a look at some other issues with military service. On the most basic note, many would suggest that it simply is not needed. Virtually every country has been able to maintain sufficient enough manpower simply through the use of volunteer forces. This is because the days are over of having immensely huge armies consisting of millions of soldiers. Modern armies and modern warfare use smaller, more mobile and more specialised troops and armies, thus eliminating the need for such extensive manpower. Now, not only are these extra personnel not needed, but by forcing people to serve, we can actually be harming national unity. Many people won't like being forced to serve in the military, and this will therefore create a clear divide between those who do and do not want mandatory service. You can't unite people by forcing them to stand together. It simply doesn't work that way. Now, you might say that people don't want to serve because they are lazy, to which I would reply, yes, but also no. The youth of today may not wish to serve, not only because many of them admittedly are lazy, but because we have other things in life beyond the military. Higher education would be severely hampered if all the young people have to go into the military first. Modern society relies on qualifications and educated personnel, but if they cannot develop said expertise, because instead of learning they are fighting, it's a waste. What's the point of everyone being able to fight if they're not able to do essential skills needed for modern work? This has further knock-on effects, like reducing economic competitiveness and the standard of many important intellectual positions. Now, at this point, however, you might say it's all worth it for the defence of the nation. What many people don't consider, however, is that the opposite might actually occur. Those who have volunteered for the army, in the most part, want to be there. They want to serve, and this is reflected in their efforts. Those who are forced to be there, however, will not try nearly as hard. Draft soldiers oftentimes float through their service with minimal effort, simply waiting to play out their time. What results, therefore, is a larger but less capable army. An immensely large but useless army is not that effective at the end of the day. Now, another potential pitfall is that the claimed boost to public health likely also won't happen. The second these people leave the military, there is no guarantee they will stay healthy. Furthermore, many people are simply not physically capable to begin with. Furthermore, if being fat essentially allows you to miss service, many people may become fat as a way to cheat the system. And finally, we cannot ignore the ever-present issue of mental health. Forcing service is likely to severely harm the mental health of the youth, which, given half of them seem to be depressed emo kids already, is potentially not the best idea. Now, despite all these pitfalls, there is one crucial idea which stands beyond all others. People have the right to choose for themselves what they wish to do with their lives. Western society has created a belief that the state exists under the people, it does not control them. Following this belief, some argue the state cannot force people to serve in its military. The military is something people politically and morally believe in or do not believe in. It's not a universal truth that everyone must love the military. As such, some argue there is no grounding behind the view that we owe something to the state which must be paid through military service. Now finally, let's come to a more nuanced but still prevalent point: the risk of detrimental patriotism. Now, there are two realities that could occur. One might see a rise in aggressive militaristic nationalism, which is highly dangerous to the stability of the modern world. The other risk is of pushing more people away from patriotism because they resent being forced to serve under that country's military. Volunteer forces solve this by allowing those who choose to serve, but by forcing people to serve, there is a serious risk of unintended consequences. Let's take a look now at how these points compare to one another. Regarding manpower, some believe mandatory military service ensures there are always sufficient levels of manpower, which is a positive because, again, you just always have enough troops. Others, however, believe that volunteer forces already provide more than enough military personnel, and the days of massive armies are just over, they're not needed anymore. On the question of national unity, some believe mandatory military service brings people together in service of their nation, and citizenship includes being part of wider society. Others, however, believe that mandatory service will create a further divide between those supporting and opposing military service. People won't feel united just because they're all forced into the same position. On the question of experience and the youth, some believe military service will provide young people with essential life experiences and lots of skills like survival, respect and so on that many of them are lacking. Others, however, believe that military service will interfere particularly with higher education for young people, which is detrimental because so many modern society positions require qualified personnel, not someone who's capable of fighting a war. On the question of how it affects the defensive capabilities, essentially, some believe military service will result in everyone being able to aid in defending a nation, and that is a huge deterrent to foreign invasion. For example, this is a policy used by Israel. Others, however, believe that military service may reduce the capabilities of the soldiers in an army, because if you're forced to be there, you're likely not going to work as hard as if you made the choice to be there. On the question of how it impacts public health, some believe that being in the military will promote greater health for the population, and it can help combat rising obesity and other health problems. Others, however, believe that some people are not physically capable of serving in the army. It could aggravate mental health problems, and once you've left the army, you may simply become fat later on, essentially. On the real key point of the freedom to choose, some believe that everyone owes their freedom to the nation and state that provides it for them, and therefore they have a duty to pay to their nation, and that means serving in the defence of it. Others, however, believe that everyone has the right to choose whether or not they wish to serve. The state has no right to choose whether or not people should serve for them, on the basis that the military is not an objective truth, essentially. You can't argue that the military is always good or always bad. People need to make the choice for themselves, and that includes whether or not they want to serve within it. And finally, on how it impacts on patriotism, some believe military service will promote greater patriotism within society, and it will rally people behind their country. Others believe that there is either a risk of aggressive nationalism, which we don't want, or aggressive, essential anti-nationalism, pushing people away from the state, which we also don't want. Overall then, there is a genuine case for mandatory military service. It provides a level of security and stability that many states need, while also addressing prominent social issues. On the inverse, however, there is also a risk that mandatory military service may do more harm than good, and is both not compatible with the modern world, nor necessary either. Beyond one's own moral beliefs, the practical side of this debate comes down to specifics. A nation such as Israel faces many potential enemies, and so having a large and ready population to serve could be essential. For a nation like the USA, however, this argument doesn't really work, given its geopolitical situation and the fact that it's already, with a volunteer force, a strong military power, and no one's really gonna invade the United States. And I'll end, of course, by putting the question to you. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments or on Twitter. Be sure to check back next Monday for another episode. Thank you all for listening, and I hope to see you soon.